And welcome to the Raleigh Board of Selectmen special meeting for February 17th, 2015. The time being 10:20, I call the meeting to order. And as a reminder, this meeting is being video and audio recorded digitally. Our first order on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. And Mr. Gaynor, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Our next item agenda is an appointment with William H. Gaynor, Cemetery Commissioner. And we would like to discuss with Mr. Gaynor hours as listed on the cemetery payroll voucher and timesheet for the 2-week period ending February 4th, 2015. Okay. On February 12th, 2015, a letter was sent to William H. Gaynor, Cemetery Commissioner, Town of Raleigh, 63 Central Street, Raleigh, Mass. And it was in reference to Selectmen's meeting to discuss hours listed on cemetery payroll voucher for weekend ending February 4th, 2015. Dear Mr. Gaynor, the Board of Selectmen is requesting you attend a special meeting on Tuesday, February 17th, 2015 at 10 a.m. in the Selectmen's office to discuss your hours you listed on the Cemetery Department payroll voucher and timesheet for the 2-week period ending February 4th, 2015. There are no Board of Selectmen signatures approving your payroll submittal on the voucher, and therefore the Treasurer is unable to release your paycheck. Sincerely, Deborah Egan, Town Administrator, copy to Accounting Department, Treasurer Collector. Okay. So, Bill, the timesheet that you submitted the first time shows 26 hours. That was then 24 hours. There actually a change on the timesheet of work on Wednesday, February 4th, 2015.
Right.
How did you come up with those hours?
The 26?
Yeah?
The 26 was originally, it was supposed to be 24, but I was in the barn and I was trying to get the payroll ready, and it was freezing, and it was a typographical error. Then I submitted, I got a call from upstairs, and they said, there's only 24 hours in a day. You can't possibly put it. And I said, oh, geez, I didn't realize I put down 26. So I resubmitted. Do you have the second one that I resubmitted?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I don't have that one.
Okay, and there is a discrepancy on that one also.
Is there?
Because you changed the hours for the other two commissioners. Now, the original one had 28 hours, I believe.
Oh, no, right. Oh, for the other two commissioners.
The other two commissioners were both
yes.
28 hours. And
Yes,
they
I
worked
did.
1, 2, 3, 4, actually 5 days.
Right.
Okay, the revised employee time form that you submitted only has 1, 2, 3, 4 days.
Right.
And that's what, 22 hours?
Well, they had a total of 28, so it would be 24 and 4. I have the timesheets here for how we keep our timesheets. But like I said, I was making it out in the barn where it was freezing cold, and I made the same mistake.
But the first one you had listed was 28.
The first one was 28?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The first one you did originally. The one where you had 28 hours.
The second one was 20.
You had 26 hours on yours. The first one with the other two commissioners, you totaled out to be 28 each.
Right.
And there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days that they worked.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And then the other
Right.
commissioner worked 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 days. They both work 5 days. The
Right.
second one you submitted, you've only got them down for 4 days, and instead of 28 hours, it's 22 hours.
What are those, I don't have those that copy with me, but I thought the second one that I submitted was the 28 hours.
It is 28 hours.
Well, that's what
But
they
you
were.
only listed on the timesheet them working 22 days. The 4 days that they work, they only work 22 hours.
Must have been another type
Mr.
of.
Chairman, that actually was an unsigned time sheet, so I'm not,
Right.
the accountant hadn't even included that in the
Right.
payroll.
But I'm just curious as to how it got,
It was, it came in with no notation, so nothing on it, no signatures.
so, I mean, we've already got one that's got 26, and we know it's supposed to be 24, because that's all the hours there are in a day. And then we get a second one that's supposed to be a revised, corrected edition. I mean, that one's wrong.
Can I see the second one, and the first one of the other commissioners?
Okay, this is the original.
That's the original one.
That's
Right,
the one you made up
they
the
made.
first time.
Yeah, that's the original one, yeah.
Then you go to the last page in that package.
6/12/1824. Yeah, the 6/12/1824 for a total of 28. 6/12/1824 for 28. And this is the second one over here. Revised. 6/12/18. Well, yeah, I do have 28, right, but it's in the left-hand column, I have 28 hours. But I see with the 6/12, there's 4 hours. 6/12, 8, 9, 20, 6 hours, right? I see what you're saying now. Well, this is the, okay, I see what you're saying now. It's just, it's an error on my part. I have the hours that we actually worked on our time cards, and it comes out to be 28 and 28.
Can we see?
Yeah.
I'll set Joe. What do you want?
I always forget to say that I am. Right, yeah, I need to say one name anyway. Okay, so this is all just
Oh, I see how it backs up.
It's going backwards anyway.
Yeah.
When you look at it, this is the
Right, this is the
Instead of having
week
the-
ending, yeah,
the first, and this is the second,
right.
so. Okay, any
Yep.
other thing you want to say about that? Okay, Bill, the town accountant has noted that you were plowing to get ready for a funeral. February 4th was a cold day with sub-freezing temperatures and wind chills. Also, the accountant said that she asked you if you worked from midnight to midnight and that you said yes. Please explain what you did for 24 hours.
First of all, I work from 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. I didn't work midnight to midnight. I plowed, I pushed the
Alright, thank
snow
you.
blower. We had
You too.
we had a funeral. I have a good rapport with the North Shore Undertakers, and they had called me Wednesday evening, and it said there was a imminent funeral of Mrs. Hurley. Would you please check the records and see? So when I checked the records in the morning, I found out we buried Mr. Hurley. So I called back and said, we do have a Hurley funeral here, and this is so-and-so. It says on our cards that the wife was so, with Mrs. Hurley. So I said, well, to myself, I better get this going on this, because there's gonna be a funeral. We hadn't closed the cemetery yet. We hadn't closed the cemetery till the following Saturday. So I figured that we had to get the cemetery open for the funeral. So I had my snow blower down there, and I was snow blowing the graves and snow blowing the roads and all that. And then my adrenaline just kept going. I said, well, I have to keep on going. So my wife brought me sandwiches and thermoses of coffee, and my son kept bringing me gasoline and stuff like that. And I figured I had missed a funeral in this business in 45 years, and I didn't realize that we closed the cemetery, because we had taken a vote earlier that we weren't closing the cemeteries any longer. We hadn't decided to close the cemeteries until a week ago this past Saturday.
Okay.
So the reason I was out there, which I must admit, it was a crazy thing to do because there was no one else around, but I had to get the cemetery, I had to get the grave open. I felt that the people were counting on to bury their loved ones, and it was my responsibility to get it open. And looking back at it, it was I would never do it again. I had to get the cemetery open. That was my reason.
You didn't have any lights or anything to help you out there?
I had the lights from the excavator. I shined them down the road, and I used those as the lights.
I guess I'm kind of curious, Bill, as to what does it cost to open a grave? Just
In the winter time, it's $750.
$750.
In the summertime, it's $500.
Okay.
We have what we call a winter charge, anytime the first snow or the first frost is in the ground.
When you got 4 feet of snow over there, how do you open a grave and everything else and not damage any of the other lots or stones? Or in other words, if you go over there now, you can't see.
That's the
You can't
reason.
see anything.
That's the reason why we closed it after that second largest storm. We can't take the responsibility of knocking gravestones over and all that. What you would do is you would go in with a snow blower and take your time and square off the lot and clean it off, and then you'd go very slow, and you might hit a small stone with your back off. There would be no damage. If you went in with a front end loader, you'd be sending the stones flying, and you're
So
damaged.
you worked on the 4th, which was the Wednesday.
Right.
The
From 6
3rd
a.m.
into from 6 at night on the 2nd, which is Tuesday.
6 a.m. to 6 to,
Right. 6 a.m. to 6 a.m.
All right, you got 4 hours down for the Tuesday the 3rd. Am I reading this right?
right.
And then you got 24 hours
On
on
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Wednesday to Thursday
So
morning.
you worked like 4 hours during the day sometime on Tuesday?
Right.
Then you came back at 6 o'clock on
In the morning,
Wednesday and worked until 6 o'clock on
Thursday morning, right.
What day was the funeral?
The funeral actually was called in for Saturday, and then they called up and we called them and says we can't get it open. We're gonna have to delay the funeral. And then after that, we decided we can't have the funeral at all. So we called the funeral doctor, and like I say, I got a report with them. They said, well, we'll keep it here, and whenever you decide to have the place open, and when you're ready for us, let us know, and we'll let the family know, and we'll reschedule it.
So for what I'm gathering, what you're saying now is that you worked 24 hours for no funeral because the funeral was, in other words, I guess with a blizzard on the Wednesday, and I'm assuming that's when the blizzard was, ultimately, I mean, why wouldn't, under those blizzard snow type conditions, why wouldn't the cemetery department just say, look, we can't, it's impossible to do this? Because I'm really concerned that anybody is working by themselves over in the cemetery at night. I mean, and did anybody else, other than your wife, did anybody else know you were over there? I mean, did the other cemetery commissioners know you were
Police
there?
department knew I was there.
And the
I called
cemetery
the police-
commissioners knew?
I called the police department at 2 o'clock, and at 2 a.m. and told them that if you see activity in the cemetery, it's me.
Okay, so ultimately you worked 24 hours for nothing because the funeral was canceled?
but not knowing that the funeral was canceled. I would work the 24 hours, knowing that there was a death was imminent, and we had to get the.
You know, I'm not a cemetery commissioner, Bill, and obviously, if you worked it, you worked it. But I mean, it seems to me that there's some much better planning needs to go on. If we have a blizzard going, we shouldn't be over the cemetery opening graves. No matter what, I don't care if it's my funeral. I mean, I wouldn't want, it's.
But we had decided to close the cemetery, so my thing is, we still had a funeral. I don't know what the weather was.
Well, did you make, I guess my question is, did you make this decision yourself to work 24 hours, or did the cemetery board vote that we have to keep the cemetery open so this one funeral could be held, but ultimately it was canceled anyway?
We've never had a discussion to close the cemetery. We never had a discussion that someone should not open the cemetery. So I assume that it was business as usual, not knowing that we were gonna be, you know, as much snow as we've had.
I guess my concern is that on the Tuesday night, when there was gonna be a blizzard on Wednesday, as I was watching television, there was basically nothing in the Commonwealth open. In fact, I think they declared a state of emergency, if I remember.
They did.
And so that there's no way, I mean, I'm just concerned, Bill, and like I say, if you put the time in, I guess we gotta pay you, but it seems to me that the cemetery department and the cemetery commissioners need to make some common sense decisions about, I mean, the cemetery is in the least of our worries until after a storm is well over. And trying to bury people during a blizzard is just something that we can't be doing. I mean, it just, and I'm concerned for your safety or anybody else's that's over in the cemetery at night, working by themselves. I mean, you fell down or you had a heart attack or, God forbid, you know, something happened, you've got no way to get any help over. You'll be there till the next morning, I guess, or until your wife comes down to bring you some fresh thermos of coffee.
I understand that now.
And we're responsible for our employees' safety and the town officials, and, I mean, the whole thing was just, I think the cemetery commissioners need to set up a policy that, you know, determines these things ahead of time. And if the Commonwealth is closed, then we should not have anybody down the cemetery working 24 hours. I mean, it just,
Well,
you know, like I say, if you worked the 24 hours, and I guess you did, and I guess we gotta pay you, but I mean, in moving forward, I mean, it cost
But
us,
is the question that
it cost us for your salary alone, I mean, it may be a few more hours in there, but it was $1,200 for, $1,212 for 60 hours worth of work, so, you know, certainly a lot more than, has that person been buried yet? Or now the
No,
cemetery's
because
closed?
We closed the cemetery. The person's still at the Campbell Funeral Home in Beverly.
I'm not sure what else to say, I guess we gotta pay you, but I mean, I don't think the board is, and I'm speaking for myself, but I would think that, you know, we're concerned that the cemetery board needs to set up some policies, and there's no way that you should be over there by yourself anyway. If there's need be for one of you to work to get a grave open, there should be two people there at night, and in a storm on top of that, because it's just not a good situation at all for anybody. I think that point needs to be made to the cemetery board that, you know, it's unacceptable to have this, to have had this take place. And like I say, if you weren't, it's kind of a decision you made on your own rather than a vote of the cemetery board, or did you consult with the other two commissioners to see if it was all right to do this? I mean, I'm just concerned, I just don't understand it, but like I say, if you put the time in, I guess we're obligated to pay.
Well, they knew there was a funeral was imminent. They knew that we were going to be having a funeral. So I took my own responsibility to see that the job was done.
Well, it's just, you know, the governor declares a state of emergency, everything was shut down completely, and I think it's kind of not commonsensical that someone's gonna try and bring a funeral procession up from Beverly and have a funeral up there, but I'll just leave it at that.
I think the bottom line is that we're concerned for your safety, and that it was not safe to do what you did.
Right. But looking back at it now, you're 100% correct. But like I say, my adrenaline was flowing, I wanted to get it done, and then now looking back at it, it's ridiculous to be out there by yourself. But that's what I've always done my whole career is make sure that, you know, we were ready for a funeral, and so that's what I was going on past practices in my career.
The only concern that I have too is that if what you told us this morning was that you work from 6 to 6, then you get 18 hours for that Wednesday.
Right.
And 6 hours for the following day,
Right.
which would be on another timesheet.
Right. I didn't realize until after I spoke to Jack and Peter, I thought it would go until a town hall opened. I didn't realize it was a 24-hour clock. I thought it would be, that's how the other 6 hours got on till they. And I haven't run into this before, so it was new to me.
Well, we got the same feeling, Bill. It's new to us too. We're not quite sure how it's supposed to work. And you're actually paid an hourly rate, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. How is the work schedule set for the commissioners? How does that process take place?
Usually, I'm there every day. Say, take the summer, for instance. I'm there from 8 to 12, sometimes 7 to 11. It all depends on if we're gonna have a funeral, we're gonna have an early funeral, or something like that. 4 hours a day, 20 hours a week. The summer help works with me at the same hours. The cemetery, the other 2 cemetery commissioners, they come in and dig the grave, and they come in for the funeral. They work digging the grave, getting the area prepared, and then they come in for the funeral. Fill the funeral in.
Okay, I mean, do you talk to them, or is it set up ahead of time? Is there a meeting?
Sure. We're on the phone all the time. Well, if I get a call from a funeral director, we have one to dig for, we have a funeral for Thursday, I get in touch with Jack and Peter, and I tell them what's going on, and I set up with Peter. Peter actually digs the graves. We borrow the backhoe from the town. So we set up a time when he'll be down there, and when he's free, we usually do it in 2 or 3 days ahead of time, in case we run into a problem. And then we dig the graves, and then while he's here with our backhoe, we push the piles back over that we've accumulated since the last time. We pushed a dump over. I have him pick up stones for me if we can, if any stones are down. Or we put in foundations, so I'll have him help me put the foundations in.
Okay. Now, are these done through a posted meeting?
Do we post a meeting?
Yeah?
No.
Okay.
It's part of the work schedule that goes on at the cemetery. You mean every time we have a funeral, I have to post a meeting? Is that what you're asking? Did I post a meeting when we have a funeral coming in?
No, when you talk to the commissioners.
Right, I speak to them on the phone.
When you set up a work schedule for
Right,
the
I set up on the
commissioners,
phone, yeah.
and you don't post a public meeting for that.
No.
Okay. Are there any job descriptions for the cemetery commissioners? I mean, you are elected officials, but you're also getting paid to do a job.
Maintain the cemetery is what I can do. That's what my job description is. Have the direct contact with the funeral directors, have direct contact with any family members who come in, answer their questions, keep records, and maintain and upkeep the cemetery.
Okay. Is that right in writing? Are those descriptions in writing?
Oh, I don't know if they're exact. You'll have to ask Jack about that. He's been here a lot longer than I do, but I'm sure there's some sort of just job description somewhere.
I mean, I would think that a job description would be in writing, first of all, and that if it was in fact, we would know who determines what tasks are undertaken and what the schedule is. I mean, that should all be set up ahead of time. I just don't understand how all this work gets done.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
as a member of the Personnel Board, I don't believe there's any because it's an elected position, there's not, in my knowledge, there's no job
Job
description.
description as such, okay.
The cemetery department is something that's kind of run by tradition over the years, going back 40, 50, 60, 100 years or whatever. It's always been that the commissioners do the labor over there,
Right.
which there's been an issue in the past with certain people. My concern about that is that if you want to be a cemetery commissioner, you have to be able to dig graves. That shouldn't be the way it is. But that seems to be, that's the way the system operates now. I think we really, I mean, Mr. Gaynor probably, how long you been on, Bill? A couple of years, 3 years?
This year, I'm just finishing my 4th year.
Fourth year. I mean, he's just coming in and filling in a slot that, you know, he's basically doing a laborer's, more or less a laborer's position
Right.
in the cemetery as a commissioner. I think in going forward, we need to take a look at that whole setup over there and change it, because I believe, as you're saying, every time, technically under the law, they can't be communicating, making decisions, one member to another, because that should be all done at a public meeting like we do, so.
Oh.
Under the circumstances, that's impossible, because if they get, so if the funeral home, assuming that the cemetery was open, if they get a call today that there's gonna be a funeral in 2 days, there's no way they're gonna call a public meeting to get together and determine that, well, Peter should come in and run the backhoe, Jack's gonna come in and do something, and Bill's gonna do something, so. I mean, it's not an intent on their part to violate the open meeting law, but because of the way we have done and still do the cemetery department, it's obviously an issue, and this particular incident really shines a light on the fact that, you know, the cemetery, we really need to look at the next budget season at the cemetery department and say, hey, we gotta start doing things right. And if someone wants to be a cemetery commissioner and just be a cemetery commissioner, they don't have to dig graves or cut grass
Well, that
or
would be,
plow snow over there, so.
that's a question I kind of got in the back of my mind, Dave, is, it is an elected official, and all you need to be elected is to fill out the paperwork and get voted for.
Right.
And when the votes come in and you got the highest vote, you're a commissioner.
Yeah.
Now, as an example, let's say that person runs for the cemetery board and gets elected, but he's handicapped. Okay, you ran for the board, you can go in there and work and get paid. This handicapped person can't dig graves. What does he get? He doesn't get paid. He doesn't get a stipend, as far as I know. You don't pay a stipend to anybody. So that really is not fair. You have to accommodate the handicapped under the HEPA laws.
Well, this should be addressed by the town, I imagine.
It isn't
Well,
just the
I
handicap.
think Dave has mentioned that. I think we need to look into this very, very much so and try to figure out what's going on here. I realized that back in the 50s, there was a town bylaw passed that said cemetery commissioners can get paid for the work they do in the cemetery. That's all well and good. Things have changed. The conflict of interest laws are now in place. And to me, that's a conflict of interest. You people are filling out your own time cards, you're writing your own time sheets, and we run into mistakes. Mistakes happen. That's why they make erases. But on the other hand, it's still a conflict of interest. Who verifies the fact that you worked those hours? Nobody. You were out there alone. How do we know you were out there working? We don't. I mean, not that you would do that. I don't believe you would. But the possibility is there. And we need to address that possibility. That's what it comes down to.
Well, basically, Mr. Chairman, there's no other department in town or probably any government entity in which the employees sign their own authorization to be paid. In other words, you're always submitting the hours to the appointing authority in one form or another.
Yeah.
And only in extreme circumstances would someone, you know, have the authority, be able to circumvent that process. And I think this is, you know, it's something that's not Mr. Gaynor's fault. It's something that the town is allowed to literally fester in many ways for years and years. And yeah, we're getting a great deal, and the work that Bill and the other cemetery commissioners do, I mean, we've got a bargain that we're gonna lose, literally, because they do a good job for very little money, and, but we're just running afoul of state law and ethics laws and all that stuff, and, you know, this, like I say, this particular incident shines a light on it. And our concern is that, you know, we need to go make sure that they're running things correctly over there, and that they have posted meetings, and that they really, their job as a commissioner should be to supervise and oversee the operation of the cemetery, not actually do the work and get paid for the work themselves. And I realize that going back to the bylaw that was passed, it was a shortcut taken years and years and years ago, and I think in going forward, particularly for the next budget season, I think we've got to take a look at it, because, you know, I mean, obviously they're saving us a lot of money in terms of the town budget, but they're also leaving themselves more than anything else. In other words, if someone wants to make an issue out of this and take it to the ethics commission or something, I'm sure you could. And we're wrong. The town is wrong. The cemetery commissioners are wrong, and we're all left out hanging out to dry in this. So I think, I mean, I don't see personally that Mr. Gaynor, fine, I'm willing to sign his voucher for the 24 hours. He said he was there. It's the way the system has been done for forever and ever. But I think in moving forward, I think we need to take a look at, you know, maybe a different role going forward for the rest of this year. Maybe the selectman's office can kind of take a look at the vouchers or something. I don't know how to do that, and I don't want to put the selectman's office town administrator in a difficult position, but I think we need to kind of take a look at a different setup, just to kind of keep track of what's going on over there. And then we definitely need to sit down and in the next budget season and say, look, we're gonna have to hire a couple of people. You know, if Bill wants to work over there and he does a great job over there, then maybe we could have him as a laborer, but he really shouldn't be a cemetery commissioner, and, you know, and going forward at some point. So I think that's.
We do have to make a correction and go.
Oh, I think at
going
this
forward.
point, it's been glaring. I think we've all kind of accepted it, how it's been, but now that it's sitting on the table in front of us, I think we can't close our eyes to it anymore.
No.
I think we have to, and it's not Bill, we're not pointing the finger at you, Bill, it's not your fault. It's not Mr. Dazell or Mr. Cook's fault, it's the way it's always been, and we're all gonna regret that it's gonna cost us more money to do, but I think in the scheme of things, I don't think we really have any choice but to start making changes, particularly for the next fiscal year. Get through the rest of this year doing as best we can with a little better supervision. And then for the next fiscal year, make some changes. And it may be a matter of looking at, you know, we're gonna have to put some more town money in, I imagine, and as well as take a look at the cemetery fees. I mean, is $500 for a burial enough, or do we need to charge $750? And $1,000 for the winter, you know, whatever. I think we definitely need to look at that
We do.
fee schedule, and I don't know what surrounding towns get, or communities, or other cemeteries, but I think it certainly needs to be looked at, and we don't have a lot of time, because the new budgets are coming in as we speak, so, like I say, I don't mind signing with the explanation. I'm reluctantly willing to sign the 24-hour payroll for Mr. Gaynor, and just in going forward, I think is obviously there's some miscommunication here, and there's no reason why people think somebody's gonna get buried in a state of emergency. It just isn't gonna happen, but it's water over the dam. He put the hours in, he deserves to be paid for it under the scheme that we've had set up,
So there are no more, there will not be any burials now until springtime,
That's correct.
whenever
We don't know.
spring arrives on that one.
Well, this is something new that we just started this year, right? Winter burials, or last year?
Within the last 3 years.
In the last 3 years, we started doing, up until that time, the bodies would be stored, and then,
They're stored in
and then
the,
we'd open up in the springtime, the graves.
that's correct.
As we go forward here, this is gonna complicate the commissioners, because comes to conflict of interest and ethics. You really have a can of worms in your hands for all the commissioners now, as you go forward. Every time you meet, you're gonna have to post a meeting, and anytime you get together out to do a burial, you'll have to post a meeting. Because I just see this as a big can of worms, because anybody can come forward and say you're having an illegal meeting, even though you're just going to bury somebody out in the cemetery. Do you follow what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
there are only three of you.
Right, I just don't know, you have to have 3 days' notice for an open meeting.
Right.
I know.
And if somebody calls in for a funeral for tomorrow, do I say, well, you can't come in until we have an open meeting and discuss, you know, so speak to the undertakers, even, sorry.
Well, it's not just, Bill, just to meet out there, okay? To do a burial, you're gonna have to post something, that you're out there to do a burial, because anybody can look at this and say, well, that's an illegal meeting, just the way the law is.
Anytime you have two, you
Two
only have three
commissioners.
commissioners, anytime you have two getting together, that has to be, it's a meeting, it has to be posted.
Right, I understand that, but my question is, if we go forward for what you're suggesting, if somebody has a funeral and they call a funeral, go, we have a funeral for tomorrow or the next day, are we supposed to have an open meeting?
Well,
To
do
see
you,
if
do you
we can
get,
open
do you
that.
get called, do you get called the day before? I mean,
Or
usually,
sometimes, sure, cremation can be called the night before. Sometimes they call the day of the cremation, because there's nothing to open up a cremation compared to opening a full burial.
I'm just thinking,
Well, I'm wondering, Bob, if,
Well, I mean, it obviously, that the system's not working. Bill.
No.
I think
If that's,
that's why
if that's the
there needs
case,
to
the
be-
Yeah,
system is
then we
not
can't have the
working.
commissioners doing the work.
Yeah, I mean, they can't talk on the phone about cemetery business, because
No.
that would be a violation of the
well, I
open
mean,
meeting law.
the problem we have at this point
It's
is.
a problem.
is, you know, there's gonna be a burial tomorrow. You know, unless you, I guess if you call technically an emergency meeting, I mean, a burial tomorrow is an emergency
Yeah.
for the cemetery, then it would be posted as an emergency meeting. But obviously, if Bill gets a call from XYZ Funeral Home, that there's a funeral in 2 days, he needs to call Mr. Dazell, the other commissioner, because he's the one that digs the grave. Is that call did I need you to drive the backhoe on Wednesday? Is that considered a meeting? I suppose it could be, but I think under the circumstances, I think we have to, I don't see how we can conduct business in the cemetery
Well-
without at least,
I mean, this is a
maybe post
very
an
different.
emergency meeting, but we can't stop them from doing the work,
No.
because we don't have anybody else.
This is a very different animal than our commission compared to other towns, the way they do it.
Yeah,
I don't know of any other town that has a setup like this. So as going forward, you're gonna have to be very aware of what you're doing in posting meetings and when you're going out there. It can be construed as illegal meeting and a conflict of interest. And plus, I think I've got, going forward, we're gonna have to look at it, having a laborer.
Yeah,
You're gonna have to have somebody you hire to do the work out there, and have a job description of what they do. This just shines a light on a problem that we have
well, right
in the
now, the
system.
cemetery's closed, there's no burials for
Right.
probably at least the next 30 days. I don't anticipate, probably.
Well, yeah, I think
The way
probably
is now,
May
it could be-
1st.
It could be longer than that. In that 30-day period, or 45, say 30 days, to be generous, we need to come up with
Yes.
a procedure for the cemetery to follow, so that they're both within the law, and that the public is adequately served. Because we have two issues here. We have what the law says, and we also have an obligation to the citizens who want to be buried over there at a very difficult time in their lives, to have their loved one buried in a timely manner and not be caught up with politics. And, sometimes I get a little more practical than what the law probably allows, but I think because of the current situation, we have a window in which we can set up a procedure. At the same time, we can maybe have a joint meeting sometime like this, not during our regular meetings, but that we can, almost like a working joint meeting, to come up with some solutions and see if, like I say, it may be a case of, maybe if Bill's the one that does all the work over there, maybe Bill needs to resign as a cemetery commissioner and just work for the cemetery department. I mean, that would solve, maybe that's, I don't know, I'm just throwing something out here, but we got 30 days in which to work, and like I said, I want to take the onus off of Bill, because Bill's the guy doing all the labor over there. That maybe that's a solution, at least temporarily,
But we'd have to
to make
create
it
a
work and still
position.
get the
though.
work done. Well, I
Yeah.
mean,
We
Because you
have
gotta-
to
well, we still
separate.
have to get.
You have to create a
if
position
we
and
don't
post
have
it.
the-
You have
if
the
these
state
guys-
ethics law. If you're an elected official, you're prohibited from,
I understand, but I mean,
Yeah.
if we don't have these guys dig the graves, we
know.
gotta go find, we gotta have a private contractor come in every time. You know what that's gonna
Yeah.
cost? We don't have money in the budget for that, so, I mean, I think we need to spend, have
Yeah,
a 30,
it's-
this 30-day period, and with everything else we got going, is come up with some kind of a workable solution for the rest of this fiscal year, and then
Yeah,
budget
we have to
something,
find
but-
some way to separate
budget something for the next
the
fiscal year.
commissioners from the laborers.
It's definitely come to a head, and we need to deal with it.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, before you move on, so the accounting department is looking for some direction on that second timesheet that came in that's unsigned and is dated February 4th, which is the day before this timesheet came in that has the signature that first was flagged by accounting, which was dated February 5th. So a replacement timesheet came in, but with a date that precedes the date of the original timesheet, and that came in sometime over the weekend, and it's not signed. And it didn't have a voucher with it, and of course, as you pointed out, the hours don't make sense for the other two commissioners. They're not sure what's to be done with that.
I don't think we can accept it.
It's no signature on it, and it's it's dated before the original timesheet came in.
Could we maybe, Mr. Chairman, have the cemetery commission submit a new corrected, accurate voucher for whatever the time period, if it's a 2-week period, so that we have an accurate accounting of what the hours were, when they were worked, and who did them, and, you know, I don't, reading these ones we got, I can't figure out what's what. I mean, I'm not even gonna take the time to try and figure it out, because it's a mishmash of numbers.
Yeah, we have
I mean,
to,
if they have the timesheets like this,
right.
then they need to let the commissioners go back and figure out an accurate timesheet that they all agree on, that they can sign off on, and then I'm perfectly willing to.
Yeah, because
to pay
Bill's
the
gotta
voucher.
get paid.
Oh, yeah, I think the only solution is a new, toss out all the old
Well,
sheets and
we need
come
to,
up
we
with a
need to
new.
come up with a different process. How the time is kept, who keeps it.
No, I
how it's
agree.
written down, how
No,
the
I agree with that.
forms are filled out.
I'm sorry, excuse me,
Yeah,
Mr.
no,
Chairman.
go ahead.
No, I was suggesting we have a joint meeting with the cemetery commissioners and to iron this out and the timesheets and everything else. That's the only way I think to do this. Instead of, because we're talking to
Well, we need to pay.
just one commissioner.
Well,
We
the
really need
voucher-
to pay
there's
the
a-
vouchers,
The
right?
voucher is separate from, I was asking about that second timesheet that came
Right.
in unsigned but dated before the original one came in, which makes no sense if it's dated February 4th.
Right.
Right.
If, and it was in a cemetery envelope, but there was nothing with it. But for the voucher, it has everything signed except for the Bill Gaynor, and that was the timesheet that had the notes from accounting. So is that satisfactory? Because if
We've
that
already
is,
paid the other, or,
yes, the
but
checks
we
come
all,
out
the
this
only one
week.
who hasn't been paid at this point is Bill.
Yeah, so if the board wants this morning to take a vote to authorize payment, that we need some
I
direction
think we need to do that.
from the
close
selectmen
the
on
door
that,
Right.
and then we can have a meeting to discuss
I-
broader issues.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I'd make a motion that we pay, reluctantly make the motion that we pay Bill for the 24 hours that he worked. That catches everybody up. And then in moving forward, that we meet with the
Have a
commissioners.
joint meeting.
Is there any other discussion?
I'll second that.
No other discussion? Hearing none?
No.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
I'd like to have these
A copy of those.
attached.
Okay,
We
and
need a
if
copy
the
of those.
board
Why don't
could
you make copies
sign,
of those before you
I
go on
also,
action?
I would suggest that we send a note to the commissioners and advising them to be aware that every time they meet out there, or they meet, Well, there's not gonna be any
Yeah.
burials out there
No.
until that time.
Maybe what I'd like to suggest, Bob, is that we take a vote today, this morning,
Mm-hmm.
and start the process of looking into this, the whole process, how it works.
Yes.
And then we can bring the commissioners in and discuss it with them at that point.
Yeah,
I
let's,
think we need to make
let's
some-
send a note and just to make them aware.
Right. Well,
To be prepared.
Well, let them
when
know
they
that
come in.
we're going to be looking into it. If the vote
Yes.
passes, we can send them a note and say, look, we're looking into this. We want to try to streamline what's going on. We want to make sure that things,
Yeah.
the mistakes that happened this past time frame aren't going to be made again.
Yeah.
Those types of things.
Right.
So other than, Bill, other than plowing snow over there, there's nothing else going on at the cemetery at this point, right? So if we've got this,
There's not even plowing snow right now.
so if we got this 30-day window, that gives us a little bit of time to kind of figure out what the best procedure's gonna be. And, in the meantime, like I say, it's, I don't know, but we'll bring them in, have them come in and we'll sit down at we'll make it a working session.
We need a workshop with them once we try to figure out how it should operate. I mean, we probably need to talk to the accountant, because she's gonna be involved, as to how the setup should be.
Well, I think even before we get rather than getting these other departments involved, I think we need to sit down with the commissioners and say, look, if you guys are not, if you people are not doing the labor, then what is it gonna take to get the labor done? I mean, there's a certain amount of labor that has to be done over there, whether the commissioners who do it now, or we hire someone to do it later. Exactly where, how do we work that out, how the labor gets done? And once we work that out, then, then the accountants just process the payments that the commission is okay. So, I mean, it's a matter of let's sit down with the cemetery board and just figure out what the process needs to be in getting the work done over there in a way that's legal and ethical at this point. And then we can worry about how the pay is gonna be. And if there's no need to be over there for the next 30 days, pay is not gonna be an issue. Anyway,
I think
once
we're probably
once we
looking
get
more
by
than-
this
More
particular.
than 45 days. I mean, the
Yeah, I
amount
think
of
we got
snow
more
that's
than
out there.
30, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we probably got till the middle of March anyway before because once the snow starts to melt, then you still got the frost to come out of the ground.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of things like that. But in the meantime, I think if we push for 30 days and get a little bit extra, fine. We have to. But my suggestion would be that let's set up a working meeting like this
Yes.
during the day. With the commissioners
that
to
would
find
work
out
out.
exactly where we all stand and what their views are, and then
I think you're right. Not an evening meeting, but a
yeah,
daytime
something
workshop.
during the day that we can, like
Yeah.
this, we can, meet and, it'll be on camera and everything, but at least we get to, kind of kick everything around, a working session rather than a formal hearing
I
or
agree.
something like that.
Do you need a motion for the letter? Or-
Yeah, I
Well, let me
mean,
just ask the town administrator, does that sound workable?
Yeah, I think that's workable.
No, I mean, just, from you're our legal eagle.
Yeah, sure, that would be fine, and, give some time to, look through the requirements, the open meeting law, which is probably the key thing I think that I'm hearing this morning. If the business of the board is to dig graves, then that's the business of the board, and how does that apply to the open meeting law?
Yep.
Yeah.
And we also need to determine, how do we pay them? They really can't be signing their own pay voucher.
Maybe there's something,
that
something we're not
definitely is.
aware of in the law too.
No, I think the law is
I-
pretty clear.
yeah, well-
The problem is the law is in black and white. This has been a gray area or murky area for years and years.
I'm wondering if there's any other town that does,
I don't think so.
has commission like, does the work like this.
I don't know.
I mean, it's just like Bob said earlier about the chairman said earlier about, handicap wrestling, not just the handicap persons. If I wanted to be on the cemetery
Yeah.
board, I'm not going over and dig graves. I mean, to me, that's not, that's not a requirement to be a secretary, to be a cemetery commissioner. Any more than, the water commissioner is gonna go out and jump in a hole to dig out a water pipe. That's not they're there to hire people and supervise the overall operation, set policy, but not to actually do the work. And you know, it's sad because, and it's sad in the sense that we've had a bargain for years
Yes.
and years. But right now, we know it's an illegal bargain, and we need to straighten it out before it becomes a legal issue, and
That's right.
other entities get involved in it.
Do you need copies, or
Why don't you?
can we keep these?
why don't you
I'd
just
like to have copies.
Either, why don't you just make a copy for us, Joe, and give him back the.
Okay, after the meeting, we'll make copies.
Okay.
Now, do we just need that motion, or do we?
Yes, we need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I think that does it.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Priority. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.